Hey, I'm Ben Silverio.
And I'm Aaron Klein.
And I'm Ansel Birch, your host in post.
And it's
time to party.
Hello, beloved listeners. This is your host in post, Ansel Birch, coming to tell you that this is a special bonus episode made from material that we thought was just not the best thing to start off the season with. As you can hear throughout this recording, there are dogs barking, airplanes flying over. This was the very first opportunity we had to try and record after the pandemic lockdowns, and we did it outside, fully masked, under a O'Hare-bound flyover. So you can hear some airplanes flying, you can hear some dogs barking, you can hear all sorts of background noises that normally we would not want to be part of our recordings. We thank you for bearing with us in this special bonus episode, because we think it's still a good conversation about a movie that is highly underrated. So, as a gentle reminder, we are not doctors, we don't give medical advice. Please drink responsibly. This was recorded on September 26th, 2020. Now, on with the show.
Welcome back to Time to Party.
Hey, everybody!
Yeah, hopefully you're ready to party with us as we talk about this movie, which is Meet the Robinsons. Hopefully you listened to our first parts and decided to watch, and you'll know what we're talking about.
Yes, there will be spoilers. If you didn't, sorry about it. Should have watched the movie, I guess.
It's from 2007.
Right?
So I think you've had enough time.
It's well past time, I think, to be giving spoiler warnings. But just in case, we will be spoiling the shit out of this movie if you haven't seen it. So,
yes.
All right.
So I mentioned this in the first part, but Meet the Robinsons is such a hopeful movie.
Yes.
It gives you so much hope that things can be better, you know? And it takes this fairly simple premise, which is from a children's book.
Yeah, I love that you get to the end and you're like, oh, this is just based on like a kid's book. Like, yeah. I love that. I think it's great.
And essentially the whole thing still happens in the movie that happens in the book. You get the whole storyline from A Day with Wilbur Robinson by William Joyce, which is a children's book from the 90s, but it was like reissued in the 2000s, I think after this movie came out.
That makes sense.
Capitalism. Yeah, right. So that bit where you meet all of the Robinsons is just the book.
Oh.
They added all the time travel stuff later.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
And luckily William Joyce worked with the filmmakers and stuff on bringing it to life, so it's not like, you know.
Right.
We're just gonna disregard this creator.
It feels like faithful to the book.
Yes, exactly.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. But, you know, much like children's books do, it takes this complex idea of, like, being without a family and looking for family and makes it really digestible for a younger audience, which is something that Disney does well for the most part. But there's enough in there that the older audiences can sink into also. Yes,
definitely. I mean, like, I know that about Disney and about most animation, that as an adult, when you return to things, there's often a lot of stuff that you're like, wow, that went so far over my head as a kid. And there was a lot of it in this movie that it was like, I probably would have remembered this movie better if I had been older when I saw it the first and only time that I saw it before this. Because it's very smart, and there's a lot of references that are clearly just for the adults who are watching it with their children, and I love that. It's great.
Oh, your dog's wearing why is your dog wearing glasses? Oh, because his insurance won't cover contacts.
I know. I was like, oh my god.
I popped so hard for that joke.
That it was I loved all the stuff with the grandpa. I loved when Bud was like, oh, my students don't laugh at this joke either. LOL, oh well. Like, oh my god. Wow.
But
I've had that teacher.
I feel like I'm becoming that teacher.
Oh my god. For real. Oh, I'm the level-headed person. Just kidding. I'm the Mulder.
A Disney staple at this point is Danny Elfman.
Yes.
He's done so much iconic Disney material, and he does the score for this.
Oh, beautiful. It sounds so good.
Yes, it's so bubbly.
I like that you say bubbly, too, because one of the things that I wrote down was, I like that he envisions this future where people, like, travel by bubbles, and it has this very, like, light feeling. I also wrote down, you can tell that it's the future because all the buildings are curved, and so it has this very, like, pleasing aesthetic. All the colors are very bright. Like, even the difference between when Lucy's dropped off as an orphan and everything's, like, saturated in, like, browns and stuff and, like, hard angles and, like, brick buildings to what is ostensibly only like 42 years later, and like the entire landscape has changed and become this like very futuristic looking thing. I love that part of that is bubbles, and that Danny Elfman really seems to like weave his way into this new imagined future too. He fits so well with this. Like he's just so like when I think of this kind of movie, I think of him like Big Fish and Edward Scissorhands. Like this is his visual aesthetic, and he just fits so well inside of this world. Yeah,
I mean, like thinking of what he did for Nightmare Before Christmas versus this, you know, it's just, you know, it's phenomenal, the stuff that comes out of that dude's brain.
Yeah, totally. He understands how to score for animation in a way that a lot of people don't. And I think that's why stuff like Big Fish, for example, works, because it feels like real life animation in a way, because of the way that it's stylized.
God, have you rewatched that movie lately? Like, when was the last time you rewatched Big Fish?
It's been a while. I read the book several times, and so it's like hard for me a little bit, because I really like the movie, because I love Ewan McGregor, and I think everything in it is very well cast. But there's something about the way that the book tells that story that I connect with. Like, I almost never reread books, and so the fact that I've read it like 4 or 5 times speaks to how much I really like it.
You should read that eventually.
You should. It's really good. I would definitely recommend it.
I rewatched the movie like during quarantine.
Yeah.
And I was just like, man, I love this movie.
There's a lot about it that, I mean, a lot of it is the same as this, where these themes of like, who is your family, and is your found family the thing that can ground you, or do you really need your bio family? And like, yes and no, it kind of depends. Like, you get to decide. I love it.
Like, this whole idea of found family is something that I think resonates a lot with our generation.
Yes.
You know? Like,
very much.
I hear stuff all the time where, like, people are being, are cutting off, like, members of their biological family for various reasons.
Yes.
So, like, a found family nowadays is more important than ever, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, when I moved here from Philadelphia, like, I mean, we're in Chicago, if, you know, listeners don't know. I mean, why would they know? But we're in Chicago, and when I moved here from Philadelphia, I had family who lived here, but, like, you know, we're not, like, super close, like a parent relationship, right? So, like, when I found a family, like, with, like, the people in my group chat, you know, when I found Aaron and Stella at a wrestling show, when I went to Plan 9 Burlesque, you know, when I discovered all these great people, it's just, oh my god, it's hard to put into words how important that feeling is.
Yes.
And Meet the Robinsons kind of captures that in a really good way.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. I think it's a little funny too that, like, this idea of utopia being told through this white family is this extended family, which is the reality of people of color that's, like, derided by white people, which is interesting that there's this idea, like, I want to reach out towards this, like, utopic idea of family and community and, like, chosen family. But when we see it today existing by we, I mean white people, see it existing outside of our communities, we view it as this, like, blemish that needs to be taken care of. So it's interesting to see that, like, there's this lizard brain understanding, like, yes, this is what you need. Like, it's really important to have a community that's strong like this, that you chose, and who loves you for who you are. And yet, we still exist in this world that pushes it away in reality. It's weird.
It's so weird. Like, let people do stuff.
Yeah. If you're not hurting people, like, who cares?
Yeah, right?
Be weird. Do weird shit. Exactly. It doesn't matter. Okay. Other things that you liked about this movie?
Yeah. The cast was really strong.
Fuck yes.
The voice of Lewis is Jordan Fry, who also played Mike TV in the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory remake from 2005.
I knew I recognized his voice, and I was like, I don't know that name from anywhere. That makes sense.
That's why I looked it up. I was like, why do I know this voice?
I did the same thing with Franny Robinson, the mom. She's voiced by Nicole Sullivan, who's the voice of Supergirl on DC Superhero Girls, which I've been watching, and she plays my favorite character on that show. And so as soon as I heard her, I was like, oh my god!
I know her from Mad TV.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I never really watched Mad TV.
Back in the day when SNL was not as good as the 80s, you know.
Is SNL ever as good as X time in the past?
That's so true.
Everyone always says that it was better when.
Yeah.
Like, so, okay. I think maybe it's just politics have a weird shelf life.
Yeah, that's true. But I remember specifically avoiding Saturday Night Live and finding Mad TV on Fox, I guess? Because they also had a way more diverse cast at the time.
Yeah.
So that was fun to see. But Nicole Sullivan had a lot of iconic characters from that. But one of them was an old Asian woman. And I'm like, ooh, Miss Swan doesn't hold up.
No. No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I mean, like, as a kid, I was just like, oh, that's funny. And now I'm just like, oh, is it that funny?
No, it's not. Turns out it's not.
But, you know, Nicole Sullivan has done a lot of other stuff since then. I hope she learned that that's not great.
Part of it is being on a show like that, where it's
true.
like, here's the script that you're given, like, cool, I guess I have to do this shit. Like, I understand that, too, so throw unnecessary shade about it.
Oh, now that I'm thinking about Mad TV, I'm thinking of Bobby Lee, who was a cast member later on in that run, and he did a hilarious skit about, like motion capture for a game. They were doing like a fantasy game, and everything they were having him do looked like really sexual acts.
Oh, of course.
It's great. I know you can't see what I'm doing, but it's
best left to the imagination, probably.
Go look it up on YouTube. It's Bobby Lee, Mad TV. Very funny. So speaking of Lewis, spoiler alert.
Yes.
Older Lewis / Cornelius.
Cornelius,
is voiced by Tom Selleck.
Yes, I loved that. I loved when he asked, "What does your dad look like?" and he said Tom Selleck. First of all, it's very much a product of 2007.
Yes.
That's like a reference that would not get made today, and so I kind of like that if kids watched it now, they have no fucking clue what was going on,
right.
And even their parents might not, like people of our generation, unless they already knew who Tom Selleck is. It seems weird that people wouldn't know who Tom Selleck is, but I understand that he's not, unless you watch Blue Bloods now, you probably don't really know who Tom Selleck is. So I love that. I thought that was a very nice little piece of 2007 culture that felt dated, but in a way that I really enjoyed.
Yes.
And then you get the kick at the end of he actually is the dad's voice. Oh, that worked so well. It took me a second, and then I was like, wait a minute. I was very happy about it. I thought that was great. I also love Tom Selleck, so
yes,
he rules.
How did you feel about the Kung Fu movie homage with the meatball fight?
I liked it. I think, part of it was that was the moment where I was like, oh, this is Franny, obviously, with the karate. At that point, I started to put it together who the family was, and it was like, oh, okay, these are the things that they told us earlier in the movie that we're now, getting this additional talk about. So in that sense, I enjoyed it. I don't know. I didn't necessarily understand right away that that's what it was, that it was an homage to a Kung Fu scene. It just felt weird, but not in a confrontational or strange way, just weird. You know what I mean?
It gave me a brief pause, because I'm just like, is it weird that they're doing this joke? But it's I don't know, it's not really, I didn't want to call it racist, because it's not really. No,
it felt more like, here's this weird kid who was into karate and grew up and now does this weird shit at the dinner table.
Yes.
That, I wouldn't have said that it was racist. It just, like I said, it just felt weird. It didn't feel specific necessarily to.
And that bit with the dubs.
The dubs were weird.
Right. Yeah, that's the whole joke. Because back in the day when they would show Kung Fu movies on American TV, they would dub them in English so the mouths wouldn't match up.
Right, yeah.
So, I understood the joke. I understood the reference.
Yeah.
It just gave me a bit of pause now that I'm older watching it.
It's something that you could not do in a live action movie.
Yeah.
Straight up.
Definitely.
Yeah, I don't know that you would even do it in a, I don't know. I feel like people would still try to get away with it in animation today. But again, those lines are so much looser, and there's a lot of gray there. I don't know how I feel about it now.
Just a thought.
Yeah, I feel like maybe one of the only things in the movie that really stands out is not having held up as well.
Right. Yeah. But there's a lot of the humor that holds up so well.
Yes.
The bowler hat guy's minions. He keeps picking the worst minions.
I had forgotten that the T-Rex joke was like a continuation of this plan was not well thought out,
Yep.
which like made me laugh even harder. Like, oh, I remember this as from being a kid and like viral at the time what would be considered viral now. This contemporary like viral marketing for this little arms guy, but then like getting that extra dose of, oh, this is also like a very adult joke, like that plays off this continuation of this not being well thought out. I really appreciate it. The writing in this was so much better than I was expecting.
Right. Looking at it now, that running gag builds because it starts in the boardroom with bowler hat guy pitching the mind scan.
Yes.
The guy at the head of the table is like, I don't think this was well thought out.
Yeah.
And then Frankie the Frog, like, Mister?
He's just considerably bigger, and there's like a ton of people, and I don't think this is gonna work.
But the T-Rex thing.
Oh my god.
That's why I wanted the game to reflect, to take a shot during this bit, because I love this bit so much.
It's so...
I have a big head, little arms.
I just don't think that this plan was well thought out. I love that.
It's such a good bit.
Also, the idea of the T-Rex with a bowler hat on is just hilarious. Like, something about that visual still really, like, clicks for me, even as, like, a person in my 30s. Like, yes, that's what I want, a T-Rex with a bowler hat on.
So what's the deal with bowler hats? I kind of meant to look it up, and I never did.
Bowler
and I feel like
hats?
you would know about bowler hats.
Well, bowler hats were very popular in, like, the turn-of-the-century fashion. They were, like, the bridge point from top hats to their, like, fancy dress hat. They were more popular in England. Yeah, they became more known in America as, like, part of dance because of Bob Fosse, because he always wore a bowler hat, or, like, wasn't even necessarily a bowler hat, but a hat that reminded people of bowler hats, and so he became associated with that, and like cabaret especially.
Oh yeah.
So it's like it's dual in that it was a fashion thing for men at the turn of the century that doesn't hold up anymore in the same way, and it also is really well known culturally because of dance. So
yeah. Thinking of Sally Bowles, totally associated with that, but I also think of that dude in Popeye who eats all the hamburgers.
Wimpy, yeah.
Another cool thing about Meet the Robinsons was that an integral player behind the scenes was Don Hall. He started as like a storyboard artist on various Disney movies, then moved his way up to like director, story editor, things like that. But like, he's been involved in Tarzan, Emperor's New Groove, Princess and the Frog, the 2011 Winnie the Pooh, Big Hero 6, Moana, Ralph Wrecks the Internet, and he's involved in Raya and the Last Dragon, which is coming out, well, it was supposed to be this year, but coming out next year.
Right.
I don't know, something about Don Hall's work is really creating this, like,
That's
next
a list of bangers.
renaissance, you know?
Yeah.
Because, like, we had that Disney Renaissance in the 90s, and, like, with Tarzan, he kind of tacked on the end of it. And then eventually he came back and brought a renaissance of his own.
Yeah, it's interesting the way that Disney's animation has shifted over the years, because everyone fucking loves Pixar, and so people want things that look and feel like Pixar. So finding that, like, traditional 2D animation style again, I like seeing that journey.
Speaking of Pixar, John Lasseter was heavily involved in Meet the Robinsons, because this was the last Disney animated pictures movie before they purchased Pixar.
Oh, okay.
Like, they were in the middle of that deal.
That makes sense.
When this was being made.
You can, like, see it in the animation style, that there's things that it's like, oh, okay, you're, like, trying to emulate some of this, but this isn't really Pixar. You can also see, too, I think it's really interesting, this feels like a movie that also set goals for Pixar in a way where, like, the hair and the way that hair is later changed through what they do with Brave, and, like, the crash of the time machine is things that they perfect later with, like, Cars and Toy Story even. The way that Because, like, that scene, you can tell in 2007 was really cool.
Yeah.
But it's dated in a way that you can tell immediately, like, oh, this was cool for the time, but, like, this doesn't really work because the animation has just progressed so much more over the last 13 years. So I think it's interesting, too, and, like, the way that the characters are shaped also feels, like, very similar to what happens later with Pixar, too. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, John Lasseter is very integral in shaping a lot of these movies that have now become iconic. So to hear all of that stuff about Me Too associated with him was very disappointing.
I mean, that's fucking Hollywood, man.
That's fucking Hollywood.
That's the whole deal. Like, men who are very good at what they do are given passes because there's this idea that they can never be replaced. And, like, look at all this list of bangers that he did, and he's involved in, like, a really iconic time in animation history, and so that means that we just kind of look the other way, and we turn a blind eye to a lot of things, and I think people are reckoning with that in a way now that they never really have before, but it's not like that's really even changed that much, and, like, that's something to keep in mind about anything, like, that you gotta pick your poison, that you have to understand, like, basically anything that's being made at an international level or a national level with budget, like something like this, there is rife for abuse, and that shit just happens constantly at, like, every fucking level, and it sucks. It sucks to have to parse that out of, here's this thing that I really like that lots of other people were involved in, but now this is tainted by this idea. Yeah. But, like, that's true, again, of everything.
Of everything.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, luckily now Pixar has some very prominent women and people of color involved in the process, and, you know, they're working on doing the good things that John Lasseter did in a better way.
Right.
You know, while taking that other stuff out of the equation.
Yeah.
But that's something that we as a society are doing everywhere.
Yeah.
J.K. Rowling.
Oh my god. Don't buy or read her books. They're...
Oh, God.
Man, as someone who, like, really, really, really wanted a Harry Potter tattoo and is now deeply thankful I never got one, like, man, what a disappointing human.
Oh, I was actually talking to my therapist about J.K. Rowling recently, and to no surprise, she let me know that a ton of her clients have, like, talked about J.K. Rowling lately.
I guess I'm not really surprised by that.
But one of the things I was struggling with is, like, I love theme parks.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure at some point I'm going to go on a rant about Disney theme parks on this podcast. But when Universal acquired the theme park rights for Harry Potter and created the Wizarding World of Harry Potter and Islands of Adventure and their main park in Florida, I was like, holy fuck. Like, the incredible amount of detail that went into all of that. And now I'm just like, I don't want to give J.K. Rowling any financial support.
Yeah, I feel really conflicted about it.
But this theme park world was created by more people than just her.
Right.
You know? Like,
she gets the most money from it, and it's like, how do you grapple with those pros and cons? Yeah, it's not easy.
Right. It is something that I won't have to think about for a little while, though, because there's no chance in hell that I'm going to Florida anytime soon.
Oh, you mean Florida that's opened up to 100% capacity in restaurants despite doing nothing to prevent the virus?
Those idiots. And
I feel so bad for people who live there. Like, I know a lot of people who live there who are not dumb and who are just as horrified that this is happening, and, like, makes me feel very sad.
In the same week, there have been outbreaks at both AEW and WWE who have been running this entire fucking time without the proper testing and procedure and stuff. And, hey, guess who's still doing shows?
Yep.
But...
Yep. Again, everything is tainted.
Yeah.
You gotta make your decisions about what your line is, and, like, it's acceptable to have lines.
Yes.
It's acceptable to say, this is my line, and I'm not gonna do this. I'm not gonna support this anymore. And, like, I support people who make those decisions. I fucking get it. It's not easy to exist in a world tainted by capitalism.
Right. Even, okay, this is a very loose relation, but did you notice in Meet the Robinsons, like, the areas of town that were curvy and futuristic that matched with the movie, and then when Bowler Hat Guy takes Lewis back to his lair, back at the orphanage, it's still the same. Like, it didn't change.
Oh, you mean like that part of the city has remained the same? Yeah, it's like they abandoned it almost. Right. It's weird. It's like the whole city was like, we'll just move over to this side. Which in real world, in like reality, would mean that that's where all the poor brown people live.
Yep.
Because there's no brown people over where the Robinsons live either, which is a big mark of how different this movie would be now.
Yes.
Like, it would not just be a cast of white faces.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That also that was part of what made it stand out to me, this idea of like this white utopia of extended family, when it's like, well, if you just looked at people who weren't white, maybe you would have figured this out a lot longer ago.
It's true. But I mean,
I don't know.
Applying our 2020 lenses to this, 2007 movie is a large undertaking.
Yeah, that's true.
And it shouldn't deter you from watching this very fun, hopeful movie, because there's still stuff from it that you can take out and apply.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, Mildred, the woman who runs the orphanage.
I love Mildred. I thought she was
Angela Bassett.
That's Angela Bassett?
Yeah.
Oh.
So great.
Yeah. Yeah, that part was great. They didn't like explicitly say this at the end when Lewis doesn't actually see who his mom is. It felt, maybe just because I'm an old sap and I'm in my 30s, but it felt to me like in that moment he was realizing like, oh, Mildred was my mom. She was the one who, like, she rescued me, she took care of me, she loved me. Like, I already know who my parents are. And then, like, to then move on to this, like, I know who my family will be in the future. I liked that a lot. I felt like it was a really nice moment for Mildred, even if it wasn't explicit.
Right. One of her lines early on is to Lewis is "get out of the past and look to the future." Was nice foreshadowing, and even though Lewis took the complete wrong message away from it, Mildred was proving yet again that she was there for Lewis that whole time.
Mm-hmm. And she raised him for like 12 years. That's a long fucking time. Also, he said he had 124 interviews. I was like, no wonder this kid is broken.
Exactly.
That's horrible.
So horrible.
Like, I've done that for, like, jobs. When I was unemployed for 8 months, I went on, I think I submitted, like, hundreds of resumes, and I went on, like, dozens of interviews. And just hearing no, even like, we liked you, but, is so hard over and over and over. I cannot imagine what that would be like as a child who's like, I have to win over all of these people who want to adopt me. Like, how horrific. Low-key horror movie moment.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man, when the peanut butter and jelly dispenser went wrong, my heart broke for Lewis.
I felt so bad. I also was like, why don't you test your inventions before you try them on people ever?
Yeah.
It's like, kid.
Lewis was a terrible roommate.
Yes, I felt bad for Goob. Like, I totally understand why this kid looks like he's about to die from the plague. Like, his roommate never fucking sleeps or goes to bed.
Yeah.
I wrote a note. Is Will Robinson on meth? And I think it might just run in the family, actually. Their blood is just meth, I guess. Like, we could stay up for days.
Yeah, Wilbur is constantly on. That's right.
Yes.
He doesn't turn off.
He never turns off. It's like, Jesus Christ, man, calm the fuck down. Take, like, half as much Adderall as you're taking.
And speaking of Goob, when Goob turns into the bowler hat guy, what is that fashion choice?
Which one?
Like the black leotard and that, like, I guess it's a cape?
Yeah,
like,
I thought he was wearing, like, they looked to me like black, like, cigarette-style jean pants, almost. They were cut. But then, like, I don't know what his top was. I guess it makes sense that it would just be, like, a whole unitard. I love the way he was drawn. The bowler hat guy. Like, the way that he moved felt, like, both very infantile and insect-like in a way that I really liked. And it felt like, if this kid just, like, cried alone in a bed for 30 years and got real sad, like, I could see how he could turn out like this fucking weirdo. I mean, I'm interested in where he found the bowler hat, though. Like, well, I guess he doesn't actually have a bowler hat until he finds Doris.
Yes.
I like that her name is Doris.
Yeah, and they show in her display that it was DOR 15.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's like a recent thing that I love playing with words and numbers, but like Pen 15 does it too, and like, even though that's like an old gag, but
internet sweet. We call it Leet.
Leet. Is that what they call it?
L33T.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm cool, Ben. I grew up with a computer. I had a note. So I just want to make sure that everyone is 100% clear that if an octopus and a not a dragon, if an octopus and a dinosaur were to interact with each other, an octopus would wreck a dinosaur.
Oh,
like,
well, specifically a T-Rex. You think
Octopus-
any dinosaur?
an octopus of equal size to the dinosaur in the same way that it was in this would fucking wreck a dinosaur. Have you ever seen that video
That's
of
true.
the aquarium that had a shark and they were like, oh no, we're gonna put a great white shark in with an octopus. We're so worried for the octopus. They dropped that sucker in and the octopus wrapped around the shark and dragged it into its cave, I think literally 15 seconds after they put it into the tank. Like,
Octopuses are badass.
They are fucking badass and they will wreck you. Like,
Absolutely.
there's a reason you should have an octopus. I think it might actually be a squid, the butler, but
Yeah.
octopus or squid, both very, very smart and like will absolutely fuck the shit up.
Oh, 100%.
100%. As soon as it jumped on that dinosaur, I was like, that dinosaur's dead. That's just the end of that dinosaur. Sorry about it. I don't know what you want me to tell you.
Yeah, no, I fully endorse that statement. So at the very end, they give you the origin of Keep Moving Forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to read the whole quote.
Yes.
Because it's such a good thing to take away.
Yes.
Around here, however, we don't look backwards for very long. We keep moving forward, opening up new doors and doing new things because we're curious. And curiosity keeps leading us down new paths. And that was a quote from Walt Disney that they adapted into this.
I really
plot.
liked that. I liked that this is who he became as he became Cornelius. I love that he really had that like Imagineer
Yes.
like feel about him. Yeah, I really like this. I loved the people who became his parents too.
Oh my god.
I can't remember what her name was. Lucille. I loved when Lucille was like, what memory should I choose? And just listed off all this dope shit. The one that really caught my attention was my first gold medal for the luge. I was like, damn, Lucille.
She swam the English Channel?
I know, I was like, Jesus Christ. She was like throwing this shit off. She's wearing like 76 cups of coffee on her arm. Like, I can see why you guys got along. We're like, we gotta adopt this fucking weirdo.
Oh yes. And it's the weirdos who bring imagination to life.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, like, I mean, this may sound like I'm such a shill for the Walt Disney Company, but it's just like some of the things that they create. Like, thinking of how much I don't like the movie Avatar, and how, well, more like I'm very indifferent about it.
Yeah.
Seeing what they did at the Animal Kingdom.
Oh my god, it's amazing.
And bringing Pandora to life.
Amazing.
Oh, mind-blowing.
It legit, I had like a religious experience on the
Floating mountains.
It was nuts.
How do you make floating mountains?
It's so cool. It blew my mind. It's like the most impressed I've ever been in a theme park.
I'm going to break down when I finally get to go to Batuu and do all the Star Wars land stuff.
Dude, I'm so excited.
Oh my god, like,
I can't wait.
God, Florida, get your shit under control so I can go to Star Wars land.
I mean, you go to California.
Oh, that's true.
It's not the same.
Not the same.
It's not the same. Like, I'm sorry, land people, but it's not the same.
I love Disneyland, though.
I like Disneyland a lot, but it's not the same.
It's not. I agree.
It fits in the parking lot of Disney World. That's crazy.
It's just something about that OG environment, you know? Like, I have this much different feeling when I'm walking down Main Street in Disneyland than I have walking down Main Street in Disney World.
I mean, Disneyland is the OG though.
Right,
it's the original, but
like, it's just something in the air.
Yeah,
that's different. I don't know. It's hard to explain. Like,
I think it's because it's its own municipal city, and Disney was like, we literally control everything about this island.
Yeah.
I think that's part of what this Disney World feels very much like it's in a bubble, because it is. But I agree. Disney is very. I love. There was a bit when they were flying through the future and it's to Dayland and they pass by the Space Mountain. Definitely, it very much feels like the 70s and 50s projection, Jetson style into the future, and it feels purposeful. I think that was done for a specific reason, and I think that's because Tomorrowland is modeled in that retro futuristic look. So it feels very much like they did that on purpose. It doesn't feel like it was just this is the future and it just happens to look this way. It feels like a very deliberate choice.
Yeah, one of the most important things about that Walt Disney quote at the end of Meet the Robinsons, you know, they focus on keep moving forward.
Right.
But right before that, they say we don't look back for very long. They still look back to see where they were to go forward.
That's true.
And that's an important thing to take away from this also.
I think that's a really good point. It's not that they say we don't look back at all.
Yep.
We just don't look back too long.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's great.
That's definitely a message that the world needs to hear right now.
It sure the fuck is, Ben. Sure the fuck is.
Ooh,
I really like that Disney has this like very hopeful idea of the future, and even when they're doing movies like WALL-E, where they're talking about like what human achievement can stop you from doing, and how it can create this like plateau that you sit inside of, they still have this idea like humans will persevere, and they will push forward, and like if we just come together and have this community, we can create amazing things. And I like that idea behind Disney, even if like the bureaucracy and the like corporate nature of Disney as a company doesn't always line up with that. The feelings in the parks always feel very magical and because I think you're right. I think that they connect with that feeling of we can imagine the best for tomorrow. Americans' vision of the future has always been this like idea that will grow exponentially, which is just like not true of how humans actually operate. It's an idea more rooted in the idea of capitalism. And so the idea that we as humans could like achieve that kind of like exponential growth, I think is kind of only possible if you're thinking of it through the lens of capitalism, because humans just don't. I mean, humans of our modern age do not think of achievement outside of the lens of capitalism. That I don't think that this could be a movie that was made outside of that, just because of who we are as a country and as a global economy.
Yeah.
But I agree. I feel like if this had been, although I don't know, I even feel like the idea of failure is really antithetical to capitalism in a lot of ways, and so this feels like it already sits on the edge of something that pushes against the idea of like exceptionalism and capitalism. Like exceptionalism can still be found inside of failure, and like they even say like failure is great because you learn something, success not so much. And so I feel like it does ride that fine line of, is this really a utopia, or is this just like the future plus it's nicer?
Yeah.
Which like maybe that's okay for now.
Right, exactly.
It's technically only 30 years later.
Oh my god. This is set in 2037.
I hate it.
And here we are in 2020.
We can't leave our houses.
Yeah. Oh, another thing that I meant to bring up when you were talking about the Pixar style. William Joyce also worked on a movie, I believe, that featured Ewan McGregor, called Robots. It came out around the same time, and stylistically they were almost similar. You could see it in the Carl the Robot that Harlan Williams voices. The robotic style and the futuristic style is kind of similar, so I think you especially see it in Bowler Hat Guy. They wanted to establish a different visual style from that Robots movie. Yeah. Because I definitely remember now these movies coming out so close together and being like, oh.
Bugs Life and Ants.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's in Hollywood a lot.
Yeah, whole lot.
They're doing something with bugs. They're doing something with the future.
Oh, hey, let's do a robot picture.
Yeah. All right, let's get everybody on our robot picture. All right. Any other thoughts on the movie?
No, I think.
Thank you for joining us here for Time to Party. I'm your host and post, Ansel Birch, and the producer for this show at Indecisionist Productions. Thank you so much for an amazing Season 1 of Time to Party. You can interact with us online using the hashtag Time2Party. That's the number 2 party. You can find Ben Silverio on Twitter and Instagram at bsilverio20. You can find Aaron Klein at EarnGenC on Instagram. And you can find me at Indecisionist on Twitter and The Indecisionist on Instagram. Special thanks to April Moralva for our podcast art and to Marlon Longid of Marlon and the Shakes for our amazing theme song. Until next time in Season 2 with special guest hosts and lots of surprises, be excellent to each other and party on.